We're in the studio today with the Neewer CB300C, it's a 300 watt hub RGB LED light. Over the couple of months that I've been using it, it's become my favorite in-studio light because of its power, simplicity and versatility. In this video, I'll report on my tests as they relate to my use case. Hi, Ray here, and this is the CB300C hub light from Neewer. So yeah, this is a relatively powerful, simple and versatile light. Powerful because, at least in this space, in this, it's about 20 by 22 foot studio, but we might also speak about the price point, around $430 US. So in here, 300 watts is plenty of power most of the time. Neewer says illumination of up to 29,600 lux at 1 meter used with the included reflector. Practically speaking, in this use case, I can use it as the key light in the deep octobox light modifier, and that has 2 layers of diffusion, and I can run it at around 70%, keeping for instance my Nikon Z9 at base ISO of 64 and the 50mm f1.8 lens wide open. I'm using the 180 degree shutter angle, so around 1/48th of a second, 24 frames per second. Compare that to the light that I've been using for the last couple of years, the Dodox UL150, as the name indicates, rated 150 watts, which required setting the ISO to somewhere around 160 for correct exposure. Now I'll get to location use later, but let's get the rest of the specs out of the way. A brief mention of the main features, and I'll drop the minutiae in a sidebar. Externally, there's this well-built, brushed aluminum body. The end caps are, plastic. A solid handle. The yoke, maybe U-bracket is easier for me to say. The light can rotate 360 degrees. Of course, when you remove the reflector, it tightens down well, though not as solid as other lights that I've used. Having said that, it still seems fairly solid, supporting the 36-inch octobox. Bowen's mount, of course. Weight is 6.5 pounds, 2.95 kilograms. It's nice to see an umbrella holder, a solid attachment here to the stand, with the usual baby pin mount, and the knob here is plastic. As mentioned, this is a full RGB light, so RGB colors and RGB CW mixing technology that covers about 90% of wet 2020 color space. But let's move on to why this is so simple to use. There's no external controller or ballast. Everything is contained inside the body, so it's just a matter of plugging in the included power cable into the back of the unit. It's pretty secure, though there's no locking mechanism. And then you plug it into the mains, of course. There's only one downside to this, which I'll get to later. Turning the light on, the response is, it's pretty fast. And I like the placement. If the light isn't too high, it's a perfect spot to reach. Then, as far as the mode controls, they're very intuitive and simple to use. The main control button turns to adjust parameters and a click in to change the controls. There's a mode button to switch between modes, CCT with color temperature from warm 2500 Kelvin to cold 7500 K, and there's a green magenta shift. HSI, hue and saturation, so we can click through these parameters and adjust with the dial accordingly. Then effects, and I'll skip over these for a moment. To the full RGB CW mode, where we can adjust again each parameter: red, green, blue, cool, and warm white. Gels, which includes the usual Lee and Rosto. Most of you who own other RGB lights will be familiar with these. They're basically presets based on traditional gels. And we can scroll through with the selection dial. FX scenes, 17 in all. Now I wish these had been put at the end of the options, and as far as effects go, these are pretty standard, if there is a standard for the kind of effects that we see on most lights these days. But given that this is an RGB light, I think more should have been done with them. At least that's the case with the onboard controls. There's more customization options with the newer app, which I'll get to in a minute. But as I say, these controls are simple to use. In addition, there's a lock, so you or your assistant don't accidentally change something that you don't want to change. And a fan mode button, auto, continuous and off, which caps the light power at 40%. However, and this is a strange design choice, the level is still indicated as 100%, although it's clearly not. So you have to take it at face value as a new normal. Now I can relate to the idea that you're not performing at 100% while feeling like you're working harder than ever. Yeah, but that's how this light works. As far as the fan noise, that's an important thing, right? Well, at full power, CCT mode, after the light has been running for a while, my tests using the Neewer sound level meter measure between 40 and 50 decibel. This is, depending on the fan setting, somewhat louder than the notoriously loud Dodox SL60. It's somewhat louder than the Amaran 100D, which is of course just a 100-watt light, and well louder than the fanless Dodox UL lights. In practical terms, the fan noise, if my mic is close enough to pick it up, is easily dealt with in post-production. In my case, that means with the voice isolation algorithm in Final Cut Pro. Reset button here, so alarm press for 5 seconds. Connectivity is via 2.4 GHz, so we have the 2.4G infinity button, and that selects channels or a switch to control via the app. Neewer says you can control up to 256 lights within 15 meters, 49.2 feet, and I'd be happy to test that kind of setup. But here, I'll say briefly that in my experience, the app works well with the CB300C to control all the modes, color controls, brightness, frequency, etc., and to add more options to the effects. So to make the candlelight effect look more like a candle, the fact that this light doesn't have a control box also means there's no way to power it with, say, V-mount batteries. However, if you're close by mains, as I am in my often used outdoor locations around the home, then this 300-watt light has proved to be up to the job of competing with the sun, and that traverses the sky behind me in the places that I use most often. As an example, let's just look at a test that I did on the afternoon that I pulled the CB300C out of its box in August. But before we get to that, I'm reminded that as soon as you pull this out of the shipping box, the first thing that you see is a very nice carry case. This is really nicely constructed. Has a zippered accessory pouch, the usual styrofoam insert, and a shoulder strap. There's also a diffusion sock included. I'm not sure there's another light in this price range that includes a case of this quality. For instance, the Amaran lights, that's Aperture's budget line, they certainly don't. Just a sort of styrofoam shell. Incidentally, the Amaran 300C is the light most often compared to this newer light. It's mostly plastic build, and side-by-side comparisons that I've seen favor this newer CB300C. Most importantly, in light performance and quality. The lower-priced GVM and Godox lights also don't include a heavy case. So, right here, that puts this newer light in a sort of category of its own. I think I should make that case. Okay, onto the test. It shows the less than perfect audio, just the inbuilt mics in the Nikon Z6 III, but this should give you an idea of what this light is capable in harsh, contrasted light. We have the full sun, it's low in the sky, relatively speaking. It's around 4 p.m. on this August the 20-something day. And this newer top light, which is the C300 something or other, CB300C, it's at 100%, and we just have it bare bulb, that is the top chip-on-board bulb, 5600 Kelvin, 100%, and just in the stock reflector that came with it. And I have a variable ND filter on there, which is at around 120, just less than 128, however many stops that is. Man, there's a lot of stuff going on out there somewhere. Neewer sent me this light to test, review, and to heat. And another accessory I'll feature in a separate video. But that's the extent of my obligation. As usual, my unvetted opinions are my own. I'm very happy with the power and the lighting options, especially in combination with the full color RGB function of this newer CB300C light. Neewer perhaps is regarded as a sort of budget brand, but I think this light really, as far as light color quality and ease of use and build, is offering plenty of quality and value at this price. I hope this brief review gave you some insight into its functions and its features. If you did find it useful, please give it a thumbs up, and if this is your first visit to my channel, please do consider subscribing. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss more content from me. In the meantime, take care, cheers, we'll see you later.